part 3 of my Geo Tracker review. What is it like driving a 30-year-old Mini 4x4 in 2022? It has a 1.6 four-cylinder with 80 horsepower and 94 foot-pounds of torque. Double-digit horsepower and torque rating. Since fuel prices are so high, I think everyone's hyper-miling right now. We're only going 50 miles per hour. I'm just trailing the slowest person, but it's a perfect opportunity to film. So here we go. This thing has no tilt steering, so it semi-blocks the fuel gauge, but you can see the speed and the tach. Now we can speed up a little bit. AM, FM, stereo. So I brought my little speaker here for music. I'm gonna drive a total of about 4 hours today. I have a stop in about 38 miles. Gonna stop off at the fuel station. Yeah, we'll just trail the slowest guy. Well, now we're going 55 at least. So I haven't taken this on a 6% grade yet. I will soon. This will turn into a 6% grade soon. But so far, even with its low horsepower and torque rating, this thing has surprised me in how it performs. I haven't needed a downshift. When I'm on the freeway, I don't really need a downshift, surprisingly. I thought this would need a lot of 5 to 4 or even 5 to 3 downshifts, but even when I'm going 45 miles per hour trailing someone, like if someone's really slowing down or if I'm behind a semi truck, even at 45, I don't need a downshift. This guy's just all over the place. This guy doesn't know how fast he wants to go, but that's okay. Yeah, this ride's really bouncy when you're going faster and the wind really pushes you around. From a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being my E350 Econoline, I have an Abarth, another small vehicle, the Abarth. So the Econoline's about a 6, or the Abarth is about a 6, 6.5 in comfort. My Econoline's a 10. This thing's about a 3.5, maybe a 4 in comfort. No tilt steering. What I really miss about this is no cruise control. I really wish this had cruise control. But doesn't matter right now because these guys in front of me just don't know how fast they want to go. No shoulder room. No armrest. There's one 12-volt port. So this is how I'm getting my power with this Westinghouse. All kinds of plugs going at the same time right now. Here's the test right here. We're going 30 miles per hour. That's all this guy can manage. So I'm gonna pass this guy and we're up a 6% grade. Let's see how this thing does. I remember this 10 years ago. My friend Samurai could only manage about 40 miles per hour. 5th gear, 55 miles per hour. I'm gonna floor it right now. I'm flooring it. I'm in 5th. It looks like I'm going 57 miles per hour, 5th gear, flooring it, 3,000 RPM. Doing way better than the Samurai. Yeah, this is it right here, foot to the floor, 5th gear. I'm gaining speed now. I think I'm gonna hit 60. There you go, there's 60 right there. You could probably hear the wind noise. Another climb. You can hear the wind noise. 5th gear, foot to the floor, 60 miles per hour. And I have my air conditioner on. Really impressed. I was gonna be impressed if this thing could manage 55, and this thing's doing 60 in 5th gear. I like keeping the speed of this thing at 55 to 65. It can go 70. Everyone likes to drive 70. 3,600 RPM at 70. And this is what it sounds like. You could probably hear the wind. But here we go, right by the window, 70 miles per hour, if you like going that fast. Yeah, this thing's more comfortable at 60, so I'm going back to 60. There we go. Now we're at 3,000 RPM. We're climbing. .57 miles per hour. 5th gear. Temperature staying the same. I'm giving this thing a 10 in engine performance. It doesn't have much to work with. 80 horsepower, 94 foot-pounds of torque. It weighs 400 pounds more than a Samurai, but it only has 20 more horsepower and 30 foot-pounds of torque more. And it's able to go beyond 55 going up a grade. There, I'm going 65 now. We're flat right now. It's really windy today though. You could hear it. But yeah, really impressed for it to do this speed with this much power. It doesn't have much to work with. It's making the most of what it has. Topping off on fuel. I really like this a lot. This thing has a functional hood vent. An 80 horsepower vehicle with a functional hood vent. There's modern muscle cars with 400 plus horsepower now, and they have fake hood vents. Topped off on fuel, about an hour away to the desert. I'll rev it up on this on-ramp. When I bought this thing, my expectations were set very low. I've driven slow vehicles before, and I knew this was going to be down there. I had a 95 Geo Metro, 94 Geo Metros, 3-cylinder, 55 horsepower. I knew it wasn't going to be as slow as that. Okay, here we go, first gear. I'm going to rev it up. Short shifted a little bit, 5,500, third gear. 4,500 RPM, fourth. And we're about to hit 55 right there. Fifth gear. So yeah, my expectations were set really low. This is the second lowest horsepower vehicle I've ever had. I had a 94 Metro, 3-cylinder, 55 horsepower. After this, I had a 1992 Ford Econoline, my first van build, 5.0. It was a carryover 5.0 from the 80s. That only had, for such a big vehicle, that only had 180 horsepower, and it had 280 foot-pounds of torque. I'm more impressed with this than I am with that Econoline. That Econoline was a 4-speed automatic. That thing downshifted to third gear at a slight breeze. It's kind of unfair to compare the two because this is a manual, but just the fact I could leave this in 5th gear. We're climbing again right now. We're climbing right now. I'm gonna floor it. It's not too steep of a climb, but I am gaining speed. 64, 65. Staying at 65 now. Okay, 66. Yeah, I'm not downshifting for acceleration. I'm just keeping it in 5th. 67, 68. 68, 69. Will we get 70? 70. 3,100 feet elevation. We're climbing again. So that's the performance on this thing. Very impressive. 1 week later, after my off-road trip, didn't clean it yet. Other than the tires, it looks clean. White's a good color that stays looking clean for the most part. I've had this thing for almost 2 months now. Prior to my road trip, I just take this thing to work. My job is 10 miles away, so 100 miles a week, short drives. Last week I drove this thing 4 hours. More like 5 hours because of the hour of off-roading, but I had 4 hours of it on the highway, on the freeway. My expectations were set really low. This is a 30-year-old vehicle, and 30 years ago, this was one of the cheapest vehicles around. 30 years ago, this is base model, and 30 years later, it's not as put together. It's 30 years older. So when I test drove one of these things, my bar was set really low. This thing's really impressive. I compare it a lot to the Samurai because this is what this thing is. It's a second generation Samurai. Tracker, sidekick, that's what they are. Way better than the Samurai. The Samurai has a legendary status. I wouldn't mind having a Samurai. When I was shopping for small 4x4s, a Samurai was my choice. Samurai or one of these, sidekick or a tracker. I wanted the smallest 4x4 available. But like I said, this is way better. And it has to be. It should be. It's a second generation over the Samurai. Suzuki actually sold this and the Samurai at the same time at one point. That's an interesting strategy. But I'm always going to say it. Really impressive. Bar set low. I don't think you're going to like this thing. If you're used to fancy European automobiles, you're not going to like this thing at all. Get yourself one of the Porsche SUVs. You're not going to like this at all. But if you're a car enthusiast and you appreciate things for what they are, you're going to love this thing. Like I said, I got this for a purpose. I got this to go off-roading in. I got this to tow behind my van. Unfortunately, my van's down right now. So I went ahead and drove it the 4 hours to get to the desert. It was a cool experience. This thing's not comfortable. I wouldn't do it ever again. Maybe someday I might, but for the most part, I'm sticking to my plan of towing this out there versus driving all those hours. It is uncomfortable. It does beat you up. Driving to the desert was exciting because I've never taken this thing off-roading before. Driving home was not fun at all. I couldn't wait till I got home. But off-roading, I could go off-roading all day. I had so much fun off-roading this thing. But on the freeway, on side streets, it's good enough. Way better than the Samurai, like I said, and just barely competent. This is like a kid in school. It's like a kid that gets a D- in math, but at PE, the kid gets an A+. This is that kid. The highway, the side streets, this thing gets a D-. Well, on side streets, I'll give it more like a C+. On the freeway, it gets a D-. But off-roading, it's like PE for this kid. A+. So that's what this thing is. Just barely usable on the freeway. Just fine. Stop and go traffic. Off-roading though, A+. It's a scholar. This is pretty much relevant to all parts. This is going to be a 5-part series. You're watching part 3 right now. But visibility. Best visibility of any vehicle I've ever driven. And the squeaks and rattles aren't bad at all. I was expecting a lot of squeaks and rattles being a 30-year-old economy vehicle. 30 years later, it's not bad. It's not as loud as I thought it would be. You could hear the wind noise. It's really tinny. Let's close that door. We got to do the door close. Really tinny, but yeah, like I said, when you drive a 30-year-old vehicle and you know what it is, you got to set your expectation. I wasn't expecting this to be a Porsche SUV. That's unreasonable. I was expecting a 30-year-old economy SUV, base model SUV, and it's way better than I expected it to be. When I test drove this thing, I was surprised.